Today we're doing something a little different. We're not talking about a vintage toy line. We're talking about a toy line that aspires to be vintage. We're talking about Funko's ReAction line that they brought out, about a year ago? And it was all inspired by unproduced prototypes of Kenner's Alien line because parents found out that a horror movie rated R about an alien that destroys an entire crew of people probably wasn't good toy material.
For shame.
For shame. And so they pulled the action figures from circulation. They never actually made it to stores, and then somehow Funko got the molds and recreated them on the original card backs and everything like that. And then there was a huge demand for other lines, and so they've expanded. I was remarking to Melinda when we first got them, she actually pointed it out as well, the alien figures actually look the best.
Yeah, they do. I mean, we've only got one, but she's just a little different when you pick her up and move her arms and legs. She just feels a little different. Her gun actually fits into her hand a little bit easier, I find. And I actually think the sculpt is a little nicer on her face than a lot of the others. I mean, not that you're really going for the perfect articulated, exact replica of the actor in most of this line, but it's just it's pretty good. It's a pretty cool toy.
I think it's interesting the way that these are, these alien figures are based on the actual prototypes, and so they were able to port over that Kenner sculpting in the faces identically, but somehow when they got around to doing the other lines that they've licensed, their intentions are well placed, and I think they get close, but they don't quite capture that true Kenner spirit. What do you think of the packaging?
I think that in some of the ones that are trying to look exactly or very similar to the original Kenner Star Wars cards, I think it's pretty cool. One thing that I noted that's missing is the sort of, and I don't think Star Wars had this, but a lot of toys in the 80s had it, where it sort of gave a little one or two sentence explanation or description of the character, and oh, you can do this cool thing with this character, and then that's your motivation to buy it and collect all four, trade with friends kind of thing. Really, on the back of these, you've just got the photos of the other characters in the line, and you potentially have a photo of the character, their screen likeness, so that you can compare, like in the Rocketeer, it shows a still from the movie with him with his helmet and the jetpack on, so that you can kind of go, oh yeah, he was in the movie, like in case you're really stupid.
Well, I've noticed there's an inconsistency with a lot of the packaging. The packaging is attempting to be Kenner style. It's supposed to have that movie photo or still from the show.
Exactly.
And you can tell on these Buffy and Firefly ones that they do have character-specific art to the right of each action figure. But not all of the Funko characters are that way. Back to the Future is a glaring example where it's just the DeLorean off to the right. It's
on every card.
On every card. It's as if they couldn't pony up to get the likeness rights for an actual photograph of the actor.
Right.
And they just didn't want to follow through. But then on others like Buffy, Firefly, The Goonies, they have all of the characters to the right of the action figure, which to me feels much more Kenner, especially when you're talking about that ReAction logo looking so much like the Kenner logo from back in the 70s, which is exactly why they designed it that way with the blue and the white. But they missed the mark on that. It seems like they didn't follow through with every line doing that.
Well, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the cards that I'm thinking of from Star Wars that are the Kenner cards show stills from the film.
Right, they're production stills from the movie.
Primarily.
Yeah.
These are like press photos from the Whedon things, and I don't know if that's just, again, a licensing or rights issue. I don't know if different people own the rights to different things, or if it was just easier
I think
to
it's cleaner.
I mean, I personally think that like the still of Buffy from the intro, I think it's probably around the second or third season where it's like she's she's in the library and she's kind of like she's got her stake. That would be kind of a cool, shot to put there instead of just Sarah Michelle, you know,
Well,
hey, look, it's my glamour shot.
sure, but I think what it has to do with is what's readily available. I mean, a lot of the Kenner artwork from back in the 70s and 80s was very fudged together. I mean, when you look at card art for like Walrus Man, they had to like pull a still from somewhere and then like fake a wall behind him and kind of airbrush a jacket on him. I mean,
Well,
it didn't
yeah,
really.
we've already established that they did all kinds of crazy photoshopping or whatever it was that they did back in the day to fix photos. Just watch our yellow lightsaber video and we'll
Right.
talk about that kind of stuff. But I guess I'm just saying that it loses some of the action feeling of like, someone who's in the middle of doing something as opposed to someone who's just sitting, and posing for a still shot. It just
Right.
feels
Well,
less dynamic.
well, that's the charm of the Alien line is that the packaging is also from the Kenner archives, and so it has like the Ripley card art isn't perfect. Like she's just a little too far away in the photograph, and it's a little too dark for it to be ideal. Whereas these press photographs are perfect in every way, in every respect.
What are you going to do with these figures when you get them? I mean, what is the intention aside from obviously making money on their part? Like,
Well, the intention is to go back to a simpler way of making toys and to appeal to. I mean, when we were growing up, I don't mean in the 80s, I mean when we were actually growing up, college age in the 90s and in the early aughts, there was this influx of modern action figures and modern toys, and they started in with the with the hyper articulation and the hyper detail, and the Star Wars figures started to get more and more and more joints, and they were trying to make them look as accurate as possible and with varying degrees of success, and they never really got there. And people were saying, oh well, if you'd only get this one detail right, then it would be perfect, maybe on the next go around. And it just became exhausting. The characters looked like they had 30 knobby-kneed joints all over them. A lot of people in our generation don't care about that. They just want the simple, he stands up, he fits in the vehicle, he comes in a simple card with a great photograph, simple box. I mean, that's why Hasbro went in and made a vintage line for their Star Wars figures, where the figure was still modern, but they went back to this kind of packaging, where it was like the old school production still on the right with simple graphics, because people got tired of the overly digitally artworked, photoshopped, packaging, and
sure.
it lacks something.
When I see these, one of the first things I thought when I saw these had come out was people our age, they're going to see these, they're going to think they're really awesome. If you have a favorite thing that's been created by Funko, then, maybe you'll pick it up and maybe you'll collect all of them. And I foresee people putting them in their office at work, like as a cool, like, or in their cubicle or wherever it is that you work, if you have a stationary place where you work, just to kind of bring a little bit of that into your daily life. Or maybe you have a place in your house that's kind of like your little corner of the world, like your office at home or something like that. That's kind of how I envision people, because very few of us, to my knowledge, get down on the floor and play with their toys as a 30-plus-year-old person.
I don't think it's about playing with them. I think
No,
it's...
I know. I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, that's their primary focus, is to be displayed. It even says right here, adult collectible, not a toy. Then that's one of the biggest weaknesses that I would say with a lot of these figures is that, like Angel here is a great example. He doesn't have any kind of accessory. And if you take him out of that package, like if you just take Angel and stand him there and you don't have Buffy and you don't have anybody else with him, he just looks like a guy. Kyle Reese, he's got guns and stuff like that, but he kind of, could be the Unabomber. I don't know. Like, maybe that's cool. I don't know. I'm just saying.
Like, Kyle Reese gets his military coat.
Yep.
But Mal Reynolds does not get a brown coat.
Right. And, as we've privately talked about, they did release Mal Reynolds with his brown coat for Comic-Con as an exclusive figure.
Yeah, an exclusive.
So that kind of explains why they did that. Although, they could have easily done something along these lines. It wouldn't have to be super fancy, and it would have accomplished that, and it would have been really cool to have. So, how difficult is something like this to just make yourself? I don't know, but
that flies in the face of the whole retro experience.
Yeah.
Because like when you go into Barnes and Noble now, there's a cardboard stand-up display rack where you can pick through all of the ReAction figures, and it feels like the early 80s all over again, shopping for Star Wars or G.I. Joe, which is great. But there were no exclusives back then. There was nothing you couldn't
except
get.
mail-aways.
But that wasn't exclusive. That was just
Right.
if you got enough proof of purchase.
Right.
It wasn't like you had to go to San Diego Comic-Con with your proof of purchase at a certain date and time to get that action figure. So that kind of, between that with Mal Reynolds' coat and then the Marty McFly that only comes with Einstein in the Japanese exclusive that was sold at some Japanese convention, why didn't Doc come with Einstein?
Well, I mean, to that, I love The Crow. It's my favorite movie. I know that this is the spire from the film,
Right.
from the end, but it's not something that Eric carries around with him. So,
Right.
I don't really know what I'm supposed to do with this. To me, it seems really obvious that you would want to have the crow itself as his accessory, that maybe have a little peg on its foot, and he could sit there on his shoulder like in the film, and that would be
Spirit.
freaking awesome.
Like Spirit from G.I.
Yeah.
Joe with the eagle.
Yeah, exactly. So he could either hold him on his arm here, or, there's
Right.
a multitude of ways they could have made him attach to sit on his shoulder or his arm. And dude, I would totally have that in my office.
Well,
but
that's why I'm
what the hell am I supposed to do with that?
That's what I'm saying about Einstein. All those
Exactly.
G.I. Joes came with their pets. All the dogs and the wolves and all that stuff. Why
And
doesn't
strawberry shortcakes. So
why doesn't Einstein come with Doc? It's weird.
yeah. Instead, he's got this weird little man purse.
It's
I know. It
it's
looks
the remote control he uses to
Yeah.
control the DeLorean. But it's still, he could have come with that and the dog.
I still think, though, just looking at these figures, I would say that these two,
Marty and Doc.
aside from the Rocketeer, which is by far and away my favorite
Mm-hmm.
one of these, it's the coolest one. If you're only going to get one, it's definitely the coolest.
The Rocketeer.
Yeah, but these two are really nice because they're super distinctive, and either one of them on their own are easily identifiable. And they're very well sculpted, and the colors are really nice.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that they're probably my favorites. Aside from this is just an awesome figure. I mean, the sculpt is really good. The helmet is great because it's. I mean, I know
It's got the removable jetpack.
it's got the removable jetpack, which I don't want to pull too hard, but it does come out. But it does fit on there nice and snug, so it's not like it's going anywhere. I like the fact this is not super tight because I don't want it to rub the paint off of his hair, so that's kind of nice, but it does sit there nicely and he stands well. I think it would be awesome if they made like Lars Ulrich and James Hetfield from Metallica. But see, here's the thing. If they made those two, and then they should make a Dave Mustaine figure to go with it, right? And then the James Hetfield character could have the kicking action, kind of like the Karate Kid figures, so he could kick Dave out of the band, And they could all come with their guitars, like their distinctive guitars. I mean, that would be awesome.
So you want like a classic metal
Classic metal series. You could have like Gene Simmons and King Diamond. They could even basically look like this because the two of them hate each other super a lot, and that you could have them do battle. It would be awesome.
No, I'd really like to see them do vehicles.
Yeah.
And I'd like to see them expand some of these lines because like the Rocketeer, it's just the one character. Snake Plissken from Escape from New York, he gets two versions of himself. But there's no Duke, there's no Brain, there's no Adrian Barbeau character. With the Rocketeer, where's Timothy Dalton, where's Lothar, where's Jennifer Connelly? Like, that would have really rounded out those lines.
Right.
When it comes to, like, Firefly, he doesn't have his coat, and I'm not really compelled to get the rest of the crew unless they were to make, like, a Millennium Falcon Kenner-style
Now
Firefly.
that would be awesome.
Yeah, if they made,
that
like,
would be
the
awesome.
Serenity in, like, Kenner Millennium Falcon scale with the removable panels, and you could, have like the different areas where the action figures could sit, maybe like an alarm sound or something. I mean, that would be really awesome.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, I tell you something else I'd really like to see is some cartoons. But from the 80s. So
Right.
The Secret of Nim never had action figures of any kind. They are doing the Dark Crystal. The Dark Crystal actually did have prototype toys.
Right, prototypes.
I don't really know that they're using those sculpts, although those sculpts looked amazing. So the Skeksis and the Mystics both looked really great in that line. One that I'm actually writing a script for right now is Pole Position. That would be a super cool line, especially if they were going to do vehicles, because then you could have the 2 vehicles as well, which would be just really cool. And you could have like the removable Rhodian wheels, and you could even put like, but then you start getting too involved. But these things were out in the 80s, like a push button thing where it spoke, where they say something.
Well, that's like Kit did that, but that was very revolutionary.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So those are some things that I think would be really fun. Things that really didn't have toy lines, but almost did.
There's one collection here where you can fudge a fake 80s toy line. And even though I understand why in 1985 they did not make Back to the Future toys, because it's a comedy, it's got some action in it, but it's more of a young adult movie than it really is a kid's movie. It just happened to have universal appeal, no pun intended. You can actually get the Diamond Select 1/15 scale DeLorean time machine, which I have right here.
My, that's convenient. It's almost like you thought about that in advance.
Yeah, and even though it's a little too large to be in true scale, flip it around on the driver's side, when you've got Marty or Doc, it's not bad. Like, it's a little too large. It's probably, it's probably more like a tractor trailer size thing. But everything back then was oversized because these action figures don't move like real human beings. So technically they're 1/18 scale and this is 1/15, but they wouldn't be able to fit in a 1/18 DeLorean. Now, would it be nice if there was a purpose-built toy for them? Yeah, it'd be far superior. But you can actually open this up, and I believe with a little fiddling, Marty will fit in there. Well, I gotta work with it, but yeah, you can actually get them in the car, and then
hell, you'd kind of want to display them almost like that, right?
Right, with the door open. Like, you could even have him, like, oh, I gotta get back in time, Doc. Yeah, like, you could do the whole thing, and it's cool to have that because that was a real glaring omission from when I was a kid. I had Kit and Michael Knight, and you could get the A-Team and their van, and you could get the Dukes of Hazzard and the General Lee, but you couldn't get Marty and the DeLorean.
Well, so what do you think of them including much more recent shows within the figures that they're producing, like all the way from Buffy and Firefly to Breaking Bad and Pulp Fiction and stuff like that? What do you think of that?
Those have such huge followings that they probably want to get people to notice those as well, and then maybe they'll buy into the other lines rather than just having a super niche product.
Are they trying to do the wish fulfillment thing and focus on people who would really love to have action figure toys and stuff like that for lines that never received them? How far down that path do you go? Like, how popular does a franchise have to be for them to make the toys? Like, Frankenweenie, okay, that is a
or like They Live.
They Live would be a great one.
Or Big Trouble in Little China.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So those are sort of what I would consider mid-range, but they have a huge cult following, all of them.
Right.
So
Well, they're doing Jaws. Jaws is coming out with the 4 characters and I guess the shark.
Right.
So
another one I just thought of, The Never-Ending Story.
Oh yeah, will they ever do one of those?
Yeah.
Again, I'm sure they will if these all sell well.
Right.
But I'm not advocating that you guys need to go out and vote with your dollars, and buy this stuff. If you don't want it, don't buy it. I didn't buy all of them. I think if the lines catch on a little bit and they get some true retro variety in there, it is kind of fun to have a little bit of wish fulfillment. It is kind of neat to think that with a little bit of modification, this DeLorean might accommodate Marty and Doc in action figure form, and I can have them on display because they look very similar to retro toys. I think the intention's well placed. I'm interested to see where Funko takes this in the next year, 2 years. I hope they continue it, and I hope it gets better.
I think I would be interested in hearing from you guys you know, what your thoughts are, if you've got any of them, what your opinions of them are, and maybe how you plan to display them, or just generally what you think of them and if you're interested in them and which ones are your favorites. Because
Yeah.
I think that's sort of the discussion that we as a geek culture should be having.
Yeah,
You know.
absolutely. So post a comment. Let us know if you have them or if you don't, if you're interested in them, what you think of them and your impressions. And maybe if we get enough buzz going, maybe Funko Reaction will look at the comments and we'll all steer the course of their next lineups. So
Yeah.
thanks for watching this, and we'll see you on the next one.